Good morning and welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways, Coyote in the Highlands. There was a poll I saw yesterday, posted by someone that said, all people are equally valuable, true or false? There was a second poll under it, which is, if you voted true or false, or no, some people, the way it was phrased was negative. Some people are more valuable than others, true or false. I went with false, because I don't think some people are more valuable than other people, human beings. And then once you went into that, there was a second poll that said, are you a parent? Yes, and I think some people have more value. Yes, false, no, true, no, false. So of course I went with yes, false, which put me in an extreme minority out of, this wasn't like 3 votes or something. We'd already gotten past several dozen, and I was in a minority of probably, just based on looking at the graph and intuition, probably 3 to 5 people, which is really, really interesting out of dozens, I find that very interesting. And then the conversation, I'm like, some people were making comments about utility and air. Well, if you're in an airplane and the pilot gets incapacitated and someone else in the airplane knows how to fly, he's more valuable. He has more value. I'm like, no, he doesn't. His skill set might potentially be valuable in that situation. And then again, it might not. There's actually there's actually a whole lot of like little variables, because these things are all complex systems. What are the life scripts of the people in the airplane? That's a question. What are the situations with, a pilot is incapacitated? Well, there's still a crew, including a co-pilot and stuff. So, what exactly is going on that makes this person's set of skills suddenly more valuable in that situation? Well, there's a lot of situation stuff. There's a lot going on there. Maybe it's better to coach down with a newbie than it is to take a Cessna 172 pilot and have him ignore everything you say to try to land this aircraft over the phone, over the wire. Lots of different stuff. So it's a very complicated question, but the meat of the question is that someone considers the person, the human being, the individual, to be more or less valuable. And this is a very utilitarian headspace, and I don't get into that very well. I really don't. So, I'm like, nah, all human beings are equal. And someone says, well, yeah, some of you all seem to think that you're as valuable as Tim Cook. And I'm like, yeah, as a human being, I think everyone is as valuable as Tim Cook. We all have a similar, same, identical, I don't know, human value as human beings, as existences, as souls, whatever you want to call it. Actions or situations or skill sets may have a specific level of utilitarian or economic value to you or your in-group, depending on how you phrase things. But no, humans are pretty much all equally and uniquely valuable. And that's one of the concepts that I think doesn't translate very well from my side of the fence, is that everyone is truly unique and truly equally valuable, which is really insane for some people to try to wrap their heads around. But then again, I don't think you can wrap your head around. I don't think it's a logic, an explainable logic. But here I am making a video trying to do that. So I was presented with one of the classic trolley dilemmas. Oh, the trolley problem, which is basically a statistical and logical pile of dung that is presented to try to argue utilitarian points. Try to remove things from value areas, or try to get people to admit that their values aren't utilitarian and therefore aren't real and based in the real world, or whatever. Trolley problem is a bunch of bullshit. But it's fun to play with, right? So let's play with it. You're on one side of the track. So the trolley problem is there's a trolley coming. It's going to run over somebody. You can't stop it. It's on the tracks. You can only decide which fork it takes at the Y junction, which set of tracks it goes down. Now, there's so many problems with this that it's a fallacy as it is presented, because humans tend to find third ways. That's one of our unique gifts. So on one side of the fork, one set of tracks is your mother. On the other set of tracks is some young person who has the ability to solve poverty for 2 billion people on the planet. Will lift 2 billion people out of poverty. Which one has more value? Which one do you save, and why? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, so in coming from my perspective, if I try to explain this, and this is the hard part, I have an instinctive or intuitive or awareness level based thing that it doesn't matter. Like at a fundamental reality level, it really doesn't matter. The universe and our lives and our reincarnations and everything's just going to continue on just fine. Just fine. Doesn't matter. That's the hardest one to communicate, is it literally, really, really doesn't matter. Pick one. My answer is, I understand that my biology and some of the early training of my mind makes it more likely that a snap decision would be in favor of my mother. If I'm not in a full state of awareness and sit down into a lotus position and be like, yeah, this is a fun one to watch. Let's see what happens. If you go into the mind, into the biology, the neural programming, probably instinctively you pick your mom over a total stranger. Right? That's, I recognize that the body will probably want to do that. The mind will probably want to do that. If I let it have control, then that's probably what's going to happen. A slightly higher level of myself, or a slightly different vibration of myself, is going to say, hey, my mom's had a really long and full life. She's in her mid-70s. I'll ask her, I gotta live with this. Do I let you die, or do I let this young person die? You got a take on this? What do you want me to do? You have a choice. The individual is, every human is valuable equally but uniquely. So there's that. That's I put that in my answer. But that I don't think that, is it necessarily a value proposition that you've got someone here who's going to lift 2 billion people out of poverty? This isn't explained very well. So am I to assume that this is something that everybody wants and everyone works for and everyone gets a spiritual and mental and psychological and general beingness growth out of? Or is this something that just takes away your theoretically necessary, whatever, on one level necessary lessons of multiple lifetimes and how people develop? Does it fuck with people's life scripts? Does it fuck with your true desires? I don't know the answers to these questions. So, but the fact that I'm presenting the questions is mind-boggling to a lot of people. I don't necessarily consider it good. You're lifting 2 billion people out of poverty. I have relatives who were involved in the Appalachian Uplift movement, which was overall kind of a shitty thing. Uplift is one of those things where, But back to getting into the actual value, instead of the theorizing about, hey, are you assigning the correct value? Because the assumption, the utilitarian assumption, materialist, positivist, utilitarian assumption is that the person who's going to lift a bunch of people out of poverty has a higher value. It may be an economic value, it may be a moral value, it may be a societal value. It's some sort of value that you, as an individual, unique human being and star seed or piece of God or whatever you want to say it as, you are creating a set of values and applying them to other people. You're assigning other people greater or lesser value. Well, okay, but that doesn't change their value. That changes your your valuations of others. So that still doesn't change their value, you know. And once again, it's you're placing value on effects, potential effects, your perception of positivity of effects, your ideas of economic value, or what a person can do for you, or what a person can do for your values. You're assigning all of these importances and values and judgments, and you're making scales, and this is $10 million equivalent worth of moral good, and this is $500 worth equivalent of moral evil. You're assigning all this stuff and making all these maps and everything, and all of that is overlays. It has nothing to do with the value of a human being. So a mass murderer who cuts off the heads of kids and gets caught, is that person equal in value as a human being to Tim Cook or Dan Crenshaw or Viva Fry or whoever? Well, yeah, totally. Their actions are generally considered reprehensible, and from a basis of society living in the world, you probably don't want that person around you. Potentially, it's time for that person to just get born into a new body and have something go and off with their head too. I'm not actually opposed to the death penalty on moral grounds. I'm opposed to the death penalty on procedural grounds. We can't be trusted with the responsibility, so you can't do it. But maybe on an individual level, in this case, if it was one of my kids, I'd be like, yeah, I'll shoot you, no problem. That doesn't mean your value as a human is lower. It just means that the situation calls for certain right actions, and the value of your behaviors could be extremely low on the societal generally perceived societal good map, that axis, that the value of that person's actions would be considered very low, reprehensible, negative, taking away value, awful, horrible. Okay, but the value of the human being is still the same. The value of the human is still the same. And people don't understand. People don't seem to see that. People don't seem to be able to quite get to the space or differentiate, or I don't know. I'm obviously in a different world. I am obviously living in a different space. I'm not just saying this. All people have an equal but unique value. And value is the wrong word. I'm trying to translate into English, but because people keep trying to use value it's very utilitarian or economic or societally antilish as a map, as a phrase, as a word, as a concept of value. But since it's the closest word for the concept that we can use, yes, I believe all human beings have equal and individually unique value. And I'm going to run into a bunch of people who aren't going to accept the individual uniqueness. We'll talk about that in a moment. Stay sideways.